everyone. Welcome to episode, are we on number 6? I think number 6 of the Cosmic Joke Podcast with Victoria and Randall. Randall, how's it going today? How are you? This beautiful Monday.
I'm a little frazzled. As you can see, I let my environment get out of hand. I'm a little bit feeling cluttered and a little bit distracted. I've not been taking care of myself too well. So, I'm not feeling too good, but no, I'm actually feeling great. I decided to use this background for our topic today, which we decided we were going to talk about the disease of more. So thought it'd be funny to give a little visual stimulation of if your environment looks like this, maybe you have a disease of more.
Yeah, and as soon as I seen that background, all it did was made me itchy. So it was a great introduction
Right?
for topic. Just everything about it makes me not feel so great. Even though I would love to play a game of I Spy because I think it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't know. When I'm in these environments, my mind can't even pick anything out almost. It's so much that it's like, wow, which, I need a minimalist. I'm a minimalist, So we decided we were talking, right? And we were like, okay, somehow during this weekend chatting, we're like, hey, let's do the disease of more. So what's the disease of more mean to you, Victoria? How does that relate in your experience?
For me, the disease of more is never being satisfied. So always needing something, always looking for something, always on the move and never being able to sit still. So for me, that's what the disease of more looks like for me. And that's the thing that I had to cure myself from. How about for you?
Do you think that goes away for you? And post in sobriety living, do you think the disease of more actually leaves?
You know what? It does. Like when I find myself in states of serenity, it does. Like when I'm finally able to like give up control and like get to a state of surrender. Now, do I take it back all the time? Yeah, absolutely. I always find myself being a clusterfuck and trying to take back control. That's when I find myself like getting into states of non-surrender and trying to take it back. And then I'm always looking for the next thing and trying to have a new itch to scratch. And yeah. And then I get back into it. But yeah, no, I've definitely had many years of just bliss. Yeah, sure.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. How about you? What's your take on the disease of more?
I got a couple takes. I feel like prior, when I was in beginning half of my life, mostly was still addiction and alcoholism running it. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people talk about losing everything to get sober, and I honestly gained everything. I really gained quite a bit. I was getting, quite a bit. I mean, what's the proper way to put it? I was getting definitely more successful with certain things. I had the house, I had a lot of stuff, collected a lot of plants which are cool. But then I also got, started a really big company that was quite successful, which was like my dream. And it was kind of more and more and more, but the more material things, the more experiences that I thought I needed, actually is what created my rock bottom. So, that was obviously a huge part of me realizing everything I thought I needed outside of myself was gonna fulfill me or give me that joy, or I'll be happy, or I'll be successful when I have this, when I have that, when I accomplish this. It obviously didn't work. But in sobriety, I've actually on my journey, I've been through a journey of relinquishing a lot of my attachments where everything was taken after the fact. But I don't know. I'll be honest. Now I'm just where I'm gonna kind of give a different perspective. I don't know. I feel like I still do have it. It's just now where do I put it? And to me, that is with, and I'm not saying it's healthy still. It's like, wow, there's this whole new dimension. There's this whole new mystical realm, right? How do I get more of it? Do I do breath work and push so hard that I, literally have like a psychedelic experience, and yeah, I still do, to a point. I mean, I'm aware of it. I try to not let it run my life. It's not with possessions anymore by any means. But yeah, like, well, how much more of this mystical energy can I tap into, or how could I be a bigger channel, right? And it's a balance, right? Because it's like a rush. It's like a new high, right? It's like this free high, in present time awareness of magic that I admit, I'm like, wow, I want more, So yeah, for me, I still probably honestly have it to a point. It doesn't run my life, but how do I help more people? Like, starting this podcast, let's just, get out and share our story. Like, how do we, plant some seeds? How do we, drop a few things that might resonate with people, that might, help them on the beginning of their path, or maybe the middle of their path, or wherever they're at. And, how do we all keep evolving together and expanding to deconstruct this old paradigm? So, and hopefully create a new one. So I feel like I don't know. I feel inertly that we're here to expand and grow and to always kind of keep evolutionizing, which is more. So for me personally, I'm admitting it. I still think it's in there. It's just, where am I going to focus it?
Well, I find that really interesting. So like for me, it's not that I necessarily wanted to get rid of it. It was just kind of a byproduct of, like, I guess, finding a spiritual state of surrender, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I find when I hear you say that you got to a state of wanting to seek those spiritual highs, I've never experienced that. And I'm kind of curious as to why, right? And then I guess you hearing that I've gotten to places where that feeling was completely taken away from me. Do you ever wonder what that experience is like? Like, is that
taken away from you?
Yeah. And is that something that you would want to experience? Because it's interesting, because I actually crave and kind of miss those places of where I just didn't want anything. Like, because that's what it kind of feels like. Like everything's just good,
And there was a window in the beginning of my journey where I got so reset, and I was so broken, right? Like the full reset of consciousness, where I was like, wow, I don't need anything. I'm fine living in a cave and just meditating. And I'm over this whole material world, and it was really trippy, so I have felt the spot, but I don't know how healthy is that, right? I mean, we are on a planet where, I think we're supposed to enjoy it and enjoy a lot of these things, for sure. I don't think it's bad to have money and travel around the world and see beautiful things, or have money and start whatever, sober living homes, or maybe retreat centers, or places where people could come in and hopefully find themselves. And so, that's more stuff. It's just, what's it for? I think the intention behind the more is really, for me, what I had to kind of come out of that state of not needing anything to realizing, no, while I'm here, hopefully, I don't know, just trying to leave the world a better place as much as possible, and hopefully help people find a beautiful, interesting, freeing life that I've been given from the universe. And so yeah, and it's cool to when more people come into it. So it's an interesting process. It felt kind of freeing to not want anything, but I don't know, it was also kind of, I don't know how healthy it was, for me personally. That was just me. It was a trippy time, though. There's been a lot of very trippy windows of sobriety, especially from the beginning when I was completely broken. So,
well, that's really interesting that, like, kind of, I guess, in a weird way, our hopes and dreams are the thing that broke us. But then once we're broken, then it's like, how do we get back to a place of knowing what it's okay to ask for again?
Yeah. Well, and I think what happened with me was that I thought getting those things was going to bring me joy and bring me that peace. And I ended up having to kind of lose it all for a while to realize I found the joy and the peace with the very little. And knowing that I don't need these things to have the joy and the peace now. Right. I have, I'm rich, and, like Bob Marley has a saying about, what's rich has nothing to do with money. Right. I'm rich with the experience of life, with, yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. Just the experience of life, being here every day, little magical things that I get to see happen in the world, and how, the right people show up, or, it's just this really cool mystical experience that you can't really explain. And it came the strongest when I didn't have any. Well, I had very little. I was definitely going through a detachment of possessions phase, and I realized, I don't need these things to be in a great state of mind or happy or joyful. But as I rebuild my new world, so as the universe rebuilds the world around me, I do believe it becomes a self-organizing system that, when I have those things, they're not going to own me. They used to own me. Now it's like, it's cool, they're great, but I have no problem giving them away. They're like, right here, look at this one. This is neat. Somebody comes in that needs something. Here, you take this thing over. You run with it. Let's see what unfolds next. Basically not being afraid to lose anything, because I know I'm really always gaining everything. And so I think it was just a rebuilding process, of from my old programming to this new program.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So then what do you think is like I guess the gateway or the shift? Is it just maybe just being in the present moment then? Is that what the shift is between the illness of addiction versus the cure, I guess you could say, from, or I guess recovery?
The recovery. I don't know. I think it's really just a matter of programming, right? Like I was on and I really believe that, alt consciousness is, I really believe this is a type of simulation, and each type, people call vibration or levels of consciousness, and each one's like a software program, and the one most of us run on is, I need to have a family, I need to create a bit, I need money, I need financial security, I need, all these things, and it's and also that system that it seems for me it runs off of a lot of a fear. If I don't do these things, I'm not normal, or, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I just do this without thinking because I'm literally an outpicturing of this program that just keeps repeating itself.
Mhm.
But also with that program, it's that illusion of separation. And for me personally, it was like I was scared if if I don't do this, I'm not going to be normal, right? And so that's fear, and so a lot of fear of, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to have a family, I need to have a business, I need to be successful, I need the money. But it came from, like I said, a low self-esteem, insecurity, maybe type of issue for me personally. And so as I accumulated those things, it also came with responsibility, but I wasn't able to. The only way I could keep responsibility was with numbing myself with the drugs and the alcohol, because I thought I was creating it. I thought I had to take care of it all. I didn't realize that when you line up with the universe or the essence of nature, everything takes care of itself. And a lot of people use the word God. I'm cool with that. God provides, the universe provides everything and takes care of everything. But that is what I found out later. So in the first part, I needed the drugs and alcohol to put up that mask, that illusion of what I thought I was supposed to be without having any type of conscious self-reflection of what I wanted to be. I just became what, most people become. I think it's part of, what that operating system is. And then the drugs and alcohol eventually quit working, and that system no longer was sustainable, because now I actually got worse for a while, right? It worked great for a long time. And then when it quit working, I had to hit my rock bottom, right? Or my being sick and tired of being sick and tired. And then it's a rebuilding process, and it takes some time. So for me, it all kind of correlates with just an operating system that I was on. And then the healing or the recovery is really just a new software program that we install into ourselves, right? We talk about surrender and acceptance, and really what I think it comes down to is, they're all belief systems and faith. It's if we believe, and it just, the belief is what materializes into our world. So now it's like, oh wow, I don't need to run off of fear and that old system. Right now it's about, okay, I'm doing this because I want to do it. Like I'm consciously going, this sounds fun, let's go do this, and I'm not doing it for anybody but myself. I'm not doing it for a show of, I need the house, I need the car. Like, it's just fun. It's like being awake in the simulation, and now it's like I'm consciously playing a game, which comes from a whole different state of mind. And I don't need to numb myself, to do it anymore, because I watch how, as I take a step, it just unfolds, right? As we move into it, what's necessary comes. And it's very freeing, right? Very peaceful. And you don't want to numb yourself to the experience, because the experience starts to feel so good, and you feel so high naturally. So that's, and the more you feel that, you're like, wow, like I want everybody to feel this, right? And that's why I kind of come full circle, say that to me, it's kind of is a disease of more, because it's like, all of a sudden, the torch gets lit within you, and then you want to light other torches, and the more other torches you light, the more the inferno grows, right? And it just gets bigger and bigger, and then it feels really cool. And it's so neat to see when people break free from that matrix, and it's a high, and I want everybody to feel this natural high that you could get from just being present, just swimming in the ocean, honestly, during doing breath work, yoga, little things that, whatever, playing music for some people, and it's free, and there's no hangover. And I don't know, I mean, that's a long way to describe, I think, what you're bringing up, but that's the best I got to describe how I see it, you know.
So what would your advice be to, like, say the newcomer right now who, like, they're rolling out of bed, hangover from hell, their life is falling apart, they have fears galore, right? And like they're
Yeah.
not at that place where they can like feel that there's a spiritual solution out there that can actually like do those things that you're saying. What would your advice be if you could like look back at yourself from that time of day to be like, hey buddy, it's gonna be all right?
Yeah, that's a tough one because you don't know till you know, and like I literally had to get to a point where the drugs and alcohol just really didn't work. People talk about blacking out and stuff, but when I was drinking at the end, like I like nothing worked. Like it wasn't helping me sleep at night. Like it didn't really get me drunk anymore. Like it literally, that disease and more, it was like my system became so numb to those substances that eventually my system just was like, okay, I'm going to like there's not going to be any more effect because you're just so used to it, right? And so all I'm saying is it's sad, but people have to hit. I believe the deeper you truly hit whatever your rock bottom looks like, that's the only time you're going to be ready. And usually in our minds, we know for a while, like, man, I should quit, man, I should stop, but we just can't. We can't until, at least I couldn't until I was so broken that I had no choice, and that's why I've shared sometimes. People say you have to have a willingness or a desire. Well, is it that I have a willingness or a desire? Am I so broken there's nothing left to go but up? Because I was going to have to go to the bottom far enough to where finally the only choice was I'm probably either going to die because of the suffering so bad, or I'm broken open. And now I'm ready to integrate a new operating system because that old virus one is just frazzled. And so it's sad. I would like to say, oh, go do this and go do that, but people don't do things until it's almost like they'd have no other option, and so.
So, that's really interesting because I've had a few circumstances this week of people talking to me about circumstances where I'm like, okay, this is how you can try and change it. Like, it seems like they were asking for advice because they brought the situation. So I was like, why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? All I kept getting was excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. And I'm like, why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? And I'm like, I throw my hands up. I guess I can't help you then. You're not ready to change. Right. And I was like, why does this keep showing up? And now that you're talking about that there, I'm like, is this a reflection showing me that I gotta do something, that I should be changing something about me and I should be moving on from something? Or is that, am I just supposed to be accepting it where these people are at? I'm curious about that because we're talking about this.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point because, and what's wild is right when, when another, I guess, soul or whatever you want to call it is asking questions, usually they're open, right? If they're asking, they're finally open. Like, you usually don't ask. And you know how it is. If you try to tell people to do things that aren't asking, it doesn't resonate because they're not asking. They're not open to that channel, but when someone usually has a desire, they ask, hey, what can I do? Honestly, most of the time, they're open and they go, okay, right. So, but hey, there is some people out there that I guess still ask and then go, no. But maybe maybe they're just, very fresh. Honestly, it's hard for me sometimes to remember some of this because it's been so long back since I've been there, that it's not fresh in my mind. But yeah, I do find that intriguing that these people are asking you, but yet they're not. Then they're going, well, no, but hey, you don't ever underestimate the power of planting a seed, right? Maybe they call you next week and go, that struck a chord. It made sense a couple days later. But of course, you also know me. Why is it coming into your world? And look at your, you asked the question of what is it about you that's getting it? Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I do always try to look at myself and why is this coming in? What's it showing me? Am I also maybe not doing the same thing somehow? Right. Like I definitely,
because it was multiple people. Oh, right. Some AA related, some not AA related. So I was like, it's a little weird. Like,
yeah.
I noticed it.
Yeah. Well, what is it? Honestly, that's great. Like I said, we don't always know. Like we could be aware and we could pay attention, but a lot of times, things take a little time to unfold. But yeah, I do always ask my question, myself, why is this coming in? What is this teaching me? Why do I keep seeing these people? And then am I doing the same thing with something somewhere in my life? Because a lot of times, maybe it's obviously not the drugs or alcohol part. But am I, is there something a new part of my unfoldment that I'm actually doing the same thing. It's just not the drugs and alcohol. And honestly, more likely than not, I usually find that, yeah, there is some type of reflection going on that I don't want to admit, right? But it is usually trying to show me multiple things of where I'm at. But then I got to look at, okay, is it with like a business? What is it I'm not seeing, And I think asking ourselves the question really goes a long way. Because usually, and then if I meditate and ask it, a contemplative meditation, a lot of times, well, I'm not always told things, but usually something will show up in my world to explain it, whether it's a podcast, a book, or maybe just somebody on the street just looks at me and says exactly what I needed to hear to make sense out of it,
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Well, I'm going to do that then because I was like, yeah, no, I noticed it. And I was like, maybe I'm the problem here. Maybe something.
Yeah. Well, we usually are. Yeah. But isn't that the disease of more too sometimes that I got to remember, right? Is when I'm always trying to be self-reflective, when's the point of just being okay and not trying to figure it out, Because I'm definitely guilty of sometimes trying to work, once I became aware, it's like, oh, I want to keep evolving. I want to keep growing. So then I overanalyze myself and over try to figure it out. And that really does no good.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's completely fair. Yeah, because when are things just okay, right? When are you doing enough? When is the point where you can just sit there and be like, okay, I just got to wait for things to unfold and then make an inspired action once it shows up, right?
I think all the time, honestly. I do believe that's how it always is. Like
Yeah.
I get in my own way, right? I got to figure this out. I need it now, right? I need it. The same thing I had with drugs and alcohol, right? I need it now.
The self-promotion doesn't work.
I need to figure this out now. Why are these people coming in? Why is this happening? And maybe it's just happening. And it's it's one of those. What's the right word to say? Let's just call it a mind bender, I guess. Keep it.
Yeah, because like every time I try and take it, my self-will back and things like that, that's where I start running amok. So
yeah, right. Yeah, keep it simple. Really, it's already figured out. I think it's just we like, we're inquisitive little creatures, the humans, and I think naturally it's like living in a giant a game. Like, hey, we got to figure this out. We got to figure that out. And maybe we don't have to figure out anything. Maybe part of figuring out is realizing we don't need to figure it out.
So in a weird way, do you think everything is like already determined and everything you already have is already yours?
I mean, if you a lot of the teachings out there, right? Whatever it is, Neville Goddard, or gosh, who else says it? It's the don't ask. Even Alan Watts talks about these things. It's like they don't exist outside of yourself, and like affirmations actually keep things away because you're affirming you don't have them, right? Whereas if you just know that that the universe is your mirror and they're within you, then you just they're all in time being an illusion that basically. Right, we just know we have them. We know they're ours, and then they apparently show up in our world. Like, act as if you already are. Like a lot of these teachings say, don't act. If you want to be the part, you become the part. You don't wait for it. You start acting like it. You're it. You feel. You have the emotion and the feeling of already being it, and then the world reflects that back. So, I do think that. Yeah, I feel like that. We do already have everything, and in this illusion of time, and this feedback loop we're in of reality. The longer you're in present time and awareness, the quicker it gets, and eventually it becomes instant, right? And it shows us enough through the day, every day, with instant reflections of things that keep it cute and make sure you're seeing it. But some of the bigger ones, I think you take a little more time, right? You're not going to be. A lot of people say they want money. And they want a lot of money, but what else that comes with is, the illusion of stress, so to speak, right? They're like, oh, I want $1 million. Well, to ride to that $1 million, it's going to take dips and ups and downs, and the universe is going to see if you can ride it out to be worthy of it. And a lot of people get stressed and like, oh my God, I'm going to lose this, or I'm going to gain this. And they're not losing or gaining anything. It's just how things unfold, right? So you got to just stay relaxed. And I think the people who could really just stay relaxed and calm, especially with the money situation, the more will come because it's not affecting you. You're not stressing about it. You're letting that universe unfold, So it's like participatory.
Interesting. So in that sense, do you think at any point you can always change what you want?
Um, change what you want.
Yeah, like on a whim? Can you change what you want? Or do you think some kind of thoughts influence your reality stronger than others?
Now, you know me, I we've talked about this. I do, and going back to what you asked a minute ago, I do feel for the big picture. It is very predetermined. I really feel we're just playing out a electromagnetic, where there's like a giant floppy disk they call the universe. That's all electromagnetic fields, and each one of our stories is pretty much already written. And that's why we surrender and let it unfold, and when you live in it, you start to see how it all just shows up. And then when you don't know what you do, like things start, the outer world starts reflecting back. And as long as you focus, on your inner world and your spiritual journey, and starts to reflect back, and then you're like, oh, that's the way, and it kind of just spides, shows itself, and self-aligns, right? And so can you change your mind? Gosh, I don't honestly. I feel that. I mean, me. I don't think you really can. I really feel that like everything's very pretty much set and very very determined for the most part. And maybe you can more so in the third dimensional concept. In my disease, I think I used to try to change things and do things, but and tried to control it. But I don't know. Even all these things, yeah, it's one of those.
Mm.
This is one of those deep philosophical ones where I got to get back to. I don't think we have free will. I really don't feel we do.
See, and that's where I feel like whenever I have like the deepest sense of like that there's no free will, that's where I feel like the disease of more is gone for me. Because like when I fully know that, I'm just like, okay, the universe is going to provide provisions, like God's going to provide provisions, like I just don't have anything to worry about. So I'm like,
No, yeah, and I hear you what you're saying, and I
you know,
hear that makes a lot of sense, and and I'm probably way too in my head, right? I don't know, so it's I'm with you. No, I get what you're saying, and it makes sense. If I'm everything I'm saying, why do I want more? Why do I want to do this? It becomes a conundrum. It really does.
yeah.
Like nothing makes sense and everything makes sense simultaneously. I'm the first to admit I'll contradict myself regularly.
Mm.
You
But
know,
then I'm trying to understand it because I'm like, well, maybe it's because it's fun to kind of want more. Because then it's like the spirit feeling spiritual nature, just like when you really feel that close like connection to the source or whatever you call it, it feels great. It's fantastic, So it's like I can understand wanting to like feel that like high that comes along with it, So it's like I get it at the same
yeah,
time. So I'm like,
yeah, like I really like Alan Watts, and he talks about that the backwards law, and
what's the backwards law? I don't think I know.
basically the harder you try to get something, the more you keep it away because you're trying to get it. But it goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago. Of, do we already have it? And
Mm.
basically we there's or there it also can be called the sphincter law, which is a funny one, right? Because not to get too graphic, but sometimes when you just relax, things come out, right?
Okay, yeah.
So there's multiple ways to call it, but basically that, yeah, is the backwards law is really like do everything ass backwards what you think, and that's when you're in the flow of life, and when you're in your grace or the Tao or whichever
Mm.
way you'd like to describe it, the flow, and you just relax and float down the river. As you float down the river, all those things just come in, right? And it is very peaceful. But I think what it is when you see all that magic that and it's more, you want more of it. There's something part of the ego that our emotional, our nervous system feels it, and it feels so good. You're like, wow, this is really cool. And and you do want to give it away to keep it, right? And then I think really that the illusion is hard as you just become it, and it become everything around you becomes it. But then we get back to Rumi, which is when I was like clever, I wanted to change the world, and when I was wise, I just wanted to change myself.
Oh, I like that. That's really beautiful. I like that. That's
Yeah,
fun.
I love Rumi. Rumi's definitely keeps it really simple, really easy. So good stuff though. So, but yeah, it's an interesting topic for sure.
I don't know. There's just so many things I can think about it. Like,
Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely. I think all human beings have it. Truthfully, to a point, whether it's drugs or alcohol. Or like I said, I chose, I had this background made, with AI because I thought it'd be funny kind of for today. And a lot of times people, it's like somehow that operating system is also like got pack rat infused into it. You know what I mean? Like there's something about people. I mean, I think, I don't know this for a fact today, but I know at one time, one of our biggest industries in this country was storage space, where you rent storage. Like think about that. People rent space to keep stuff that they probably will never use or go get again, but they pay money monthly to put things that they don't use. Like it really makes no sense to me whatsoever. And it was the number one money maker per square foot, I know, a few years back. But think about that. Really, like I don't understand it.
No, yeah, like that's crazy to think about because it's like, yeah, it's like, what are the chances of you actually even ever going back to pick it up again? Like,
yeah, most people don't. I think of the majority don't, right? I look at how, and then a lot of people who do it, they really can barely afford it, but they're so attached to those material possessions that they'll spend their last, couple $100 to keep it, and then they end up losing it, right? And then there's that whole business of selling these things to people who buy them, right? It's a trip, and then why do we think, using this picture behind me, like what is it about this that, I mean, think about it. Like if a home looks like this, you literally live in a den like a rodent.
No, hopefully anyone watching this.
Sorry. Like, but really, it's a pack. Like, why do we pack? Like, what is it about us that thinks we need to keep? It's gluttony. I mean, let's be real. If we're going to talk biblical and sins, it's gluttony, right? It's excess of things that you're never even going to use or look at, and what is it about the human mind or the ego that feels like I need to have this memory from this person? It's like, no, that everything exists in your mind, right? Everything is a dream. And, the whole thing is I have enough memories within me. I don't need a material possession to remember anybody. It doesn't make me go, oh my gosh, it's like, but a lot of the little bit of old, at least in the United States, but I'm guessing it's probably like this in Canada and everywhere, our parents and their parents' generation, and especially our parents' generation, seem like they're the epitome of clutter and building up a lot of possessions and then also attaching a sentimental energy towards stuff. And honestly,
like their whole generation was abused by their parents for the most part. I'm not going to say everybody, but like they're the generation that was like emotionally neglected galore, right? So it's like the only way to remember people was like the small bits and pieces of, kind of exchange between one another. Just so it's like if you're only kind of validation from your parents was like, here's this one thing that I bought you to, remember you by, it's like you're going to treasure that thing. So it's like, and then you pass on to your kids that the only time that like you show love to them is like buying all this crap to like pass on to them. And then, you start collecting stuff because that's how you start showing love. Well, of course you end up with rooms like that and you start stacking stuff to the ceilings and then because that's your only way to validate love. And like, that's sad to me.
It is sad, and it's also, it's, maybe it's a byproduct of, at least in the United States, we had the Great Depression, whenever that was, a long time ago. And so like my parents lived through that. So they became very frugal and tight because there was no money. So they kept things. And then in the polarity of the, the opposite of the balance, it went from extreme holding on to things, keeping it out of lack mindset to then their generation building it all up. Because their generation didn't have the stuff, so they held it all. Then that transitioned into their kids that started to build it all up, but they did the same thing. So now they're just holding on to these things for the sake of it. Really, I think, comes from a lack mindset too, as well. And then I ponder this, and then it gets even deeper though, right? Like, and then what is the right answer? Because then the next generation and where we're at now, it's like everything's designed to break now and nothing lasts, right? All this, and so now people just throw things away. Well, honestly, is that good? Because now we're just ruining the planet more, consuming more things and throwing them away, which is filling up our landfills and our oceans with more crap. So maybe being a hoarder is healthy.
Well, and then but then it gets rough, right? Because then it's like boomers and Gen X, they're the last people who could like comfortably afford homes, where millennials and Gen Z, they can't, right? So it's like, what do? they can afford to rent, but then they also can't afford to buy stuff. And then the stuff they do buy, it just breaks all the time. It's like,
Yeah. Well,
it's not
but like everything, how does everything balance in the long run, right? And maybe that's nature's way of, getting people to say, hey, I'm not going to, well, it comes down to consumerism, right? I mean, you're either a consumer or producer, right? And most of this planet loves to consume, buy, Christmas, holidays, spend, birthdays, spend, this spend, gifts, spend. And it's a very consumer driven material world, and so maybe the energy of the universe shifting to these kids. Yeah, maybe they don't have the money. A lot of them are, I don't want to say they don't. Let's just say, yes, things are getting more expensive, but maybe that's a good thing, because now your money's going towards the one thing you need, shelter and food. And then the budget's not in there to buy all the consumer bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
I noticed too that they tend to spend more on like experiences and actually doing things. And like,
right.
I even look at like my kids, right? Like my oldest is a teenager now. And like, even just, I notice the things that they do. They want to go do stuff. They want to like hang out. They want to spend time together. Like, like not the same thing as like,
Yeah.
what it was like when I was growing up, for sure.
Well, you described exactly what my son says to me. He goes, we're more into experiences than doing. He said is exactly that, and he goes, and we don't buy into the system. Like, I've had some deep talks with my son, and he said some really wise things. And obviously, I know who my sons are. I mean, once you realize who everybody is, the wisdom streams through, and you do get to see a glimpse of the future, because he tells me what his operating system's based off of, and it's not what we were used to. But it's very different in a good way, non-consumer way, more like you said, life experiences. Like, where is the richness at? Is it buying a bunch of BS stuff made in China that's total crap, no offense, but you know what I mean? Or is it like, let's go camping, and let's go do these things, or go to I don't know, Machu Picchu, you know what I'm saying? And it does seem to be quite evolving into something where the consumerism isn't as driven as it used to be. And a lot of that generation is thrifting and stuff, right? Seems like.
Yeah. And it's also, I find, very different too, even just the places that they hang out. It's no longer like malls and like, places where you find the ads and the, things that you buy and needing to spend $100 when you walk out the door. Like, it's more like, hey, let's go for a walk at XYZ, or let's go fishing, or let's go, just be out in nature, like places where they're away from electronics, away from like, where you're getting sold stuff. And, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of refreshing, actually.
Yeah, no, I do feel we're coming out of, we've kind of talked about this in the past, but we're coming out of that industrial revolution and everything the last few hundred years really coming to a head with technology and all these things, right? And a lot of material stuff, cities, all these things being built, and going into the age of Aquarius, it's, apparently going into more of a spiritual age. And I think people, I think the unfoldment is, when you come present and you reconnect with your natural essence, which is nature, you start to realize that's all you really need is a lot of nature, right? Being in nature, enjoying the planet for what it is, being grateful it's here, because there's a lot of different podcast people I listen to. I really like Zach Bush, and he's like, we're on our 6th extinction event right now, and we can change it, you know what I mean? But I do believe that if we continue how we've been going on this disease of more consumering, more this, more that, the nature of evolution, it might wipe out the humans to save the earth, because nature's always going to win, and how does it look? Is it that AI takes over because, AI can be more efficient and nature will flourish because it's not going to need to consume? It's not going to have consumerism built into it, right? It's just going to become a conscious entity on its own. Maybe, who knows? All I'm saying is humans, I really think, need to be much more aware of everything we do through the day, instead of just buying into these systems that have been placed on us and calling them normal. They only exist because we participate in them. So how do we make better? And maybe this is maybe where the free will, maybe on this way, I admit I contradict myself, maybe we do need to look at it and go, I'm not going to participate, which maybe that is a choice, or maybe that's just an awareness that once you finally see it, now you're living out that you don't want to, that system doesn't resonate with the soul, because the soul really is very simple and very natural. And it doesn't need to go have a Gucci purse. It doesn't give a shit. That's just ego, right? It doesn't need to have the Lamborghini or the Ferrari. It's cool with a bicycle, and yeah, but hey, this is an interesting planet, and it's fun to watch what happens. But yeah, I believe that disease of more is a virus that was implanted into that consciousness that was at the end of that cycle we were just coming out of, truthfully.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, it's going to be interesting to see, I guess, how it plays out, especially in the age of AI now, right? Like I look at like workforce trends, especially like how much is changing, right? People want to work less. People want the 4-day week. They want, they don't like generally, like, especially like the Gen Zs, they don't necessarily want promotions, right? They want more time off. They care about having work-life balance. And like, I look at those things and I'm like, I see healing in that. Where it's not putting profits because they're like, well, if, there's no job stability, I'm not going to work here for 30 years and I'm not going to retire here. Well, I'm not necessarily going to have loyalty to these things. And I look at that and I'm like, I see a little bit of healing in that where.
Yeah, maybe AI is everybody worries about. Maybe eventually AI is that it's all consciousness, right? And anything in the material world is an out picturing of what's within us. So, maybe the AI is here because it's going to take a lot of jobs that are people are doing, but it's going to free up a lot of time for people to just do other things that, maybe it's not so bad to have a lack of jobs. Maybe people are going to finally realize they're happier without them to a point, right?
Yeah.
And
well, I'm so curious because obviously I think AI systems have to become much more efficient because right now it's really bad for the environment, right? Like I think
the amount of power they use.
Oh, it's so bad. I mean, I guess like DeepSeek is one of the leading ones for efficiency wise, which is much more environmentally friendly. You can run on your local computers, but yeah, like some of the current like ones that most people use, like pretty wicked for the environment. But I mean, they're new, right? Like I'm sure with time that they're going to get better. But like I was seeing, I can't remember the exact statistic, but it was something like most entry-level jobs are like within the next 5 years gone, completely wiped out. Like 80% of like entry-level jobs are going to be completely gone within the next 5 years. And I'm like, so are we going to have universal basic income? Like, I think that today's modern day, or what the average person's jobs are going to be in 5-10 years from now, I don't even think exist.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of them are going to be gone. And then now we have more, getting back on topic of disease and more, people are gonna, I don't know, but there's always going to be offshoots. It's like when the internet came out, people are like, oh, the internet's coming out, it's gonna take a lot of jobs, but it ended up creating more jobs. Like what's the cause and what's the effect? You know what I mean? Like what is that cause and effect? You know what I'm saying? Like where?
Yeah, back then they had said like the internet was supposed to make it so that you would work less, right? And then that ended up being a lie, and then everyone ended up working more. And like, but that's the thing. I think hopefully now it'll make it so that people can work less. I mean, I hope so. I think that'd be great. And then hopefully we can have less of this disease more. Because it's just it's so bad right now where you see so many people working, double jobs just to make ends meet. And it's like that kills me inside. I want to see everyone be able to like make ends meet, to be able to get what they want, and just be able to just have enough to be able to just have a good life, a decent life, and just be able to just enjoy,
Right. Yeah, and I think it also, we're seeing a lot of times a very out of balance planet in general. So how does that show? It's everything's very, we're going through like this big polar shift, I feel, right? Of, we're going through complete, at like cycle changes, like I've said, going in the age of Aquarius, but also I think at the end of a cycle, you're seeing a complete, polar opposites. You got people working all these jobs to have these things, but but isn't that also the disease of more? Like where is it that and also when you're doing that, no offense, I mean, I've been there. I wasn't living the life I am now, where I have more of an unfoldment, where what's meant for me comes. Like I am not in that law of attraction. I think you're always in law of attraction, but you're attracting what you need when you're on that vibration, and in that vibration, it's a lot of fear and things that keep me in that chasing my tail around like a dog, right? So it's like I do all these things thinking I need these things, instead of just relaxing, putting my spiritual growth first and my inner journey, and then letting my world unfold around me. And then what's meant for me come, and then whatever's necessary for that story is going to show up, which includes money. and so I'm not living for the money, I'm living for the spiritual journey.
Yeah.
And so whatever else comes ever out, and it's I remember a little story. I might have shared this on here, but when I first got sober, I remember I was tripping out because at the time I was getting a check from a company I'd founded, and and the universe paid me to get sober, which was really cool. Literally I was getting a check every month for the first 12 months. And I remember stressing one day and going to a meeting and worrying like, oh my gosh, my check's about to stop. What am I going to do? And it was a book study meeting. And in the book, we read one little paragraph, and then everybody shared a lot that day. And it basically said, if you put your spiritual growth first, everything else will basically be added, right? And the Bible says this, right? Take no thought for your life, what you'll eat, what you'll drink, wherewithal you'll be clothed. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all things will be added unto you, right? Mm-hmm. And when I hear God, I'm open-minded. To me, it's seek present time awareness. Seek that spiritual journey, the God within you, the present moment. And the point is then you're in a vortex where everything falls towards you. You know what I mean? But you got to be patient and allow it and trust and believe, and then you see it. And so, honestly, I forget where I was going with this, but I think bottom line is there's different vibrations on this planet that the movie has to come off of. And so I could be sad for the people, but I also got to remember we are on a weird planet of karmic lessons, and they're playing a role with where their soul is on their journey. And it's like the same paradox, the more light, the more dark, and the more, there's a lot of people right now saying there's this great awakening and everybody's, waking up to the truth. And I think when that happens, which is always actually happening, when you're on that wave of that happening, there's also going to be unfortunately the opposite. That's how things create balance. It's the more light, the more dark. And it's the paradox, so I could feel for people, and I feel for a lot of people, but I also don't feel for them anymore because I see the perfection of how everybody's living out their vibration and their role on this planet. And yeah, you want everybody to find this, but not everybody's supposed to either. You're not in this lifetime, so to speak, right? And so
do you think the greater the inventions that we see in our lifetime, the greater those swings, I guess, that we see, and I guess like disparities, I guess, or gaps?
What do you mean?
Like gaps between circumstances, I guess, like that in people's things. So say right now, like there are people that have to work like say 80 hours a week just to pay rent and get some food and pay for their car or something, right? But
Yeah.
say, for example, AI comes around and say presumably within 5 years it's going to take away most of the jobs in the area, and it's going to switch to new jobs, but it's going to take a while to like figure out what those new jobs are and sort of run out, right? So
Yeah.
like, do you think in a spiritual way, I guess, do you think that we see these like big extremes because we see something that's like shifting something so crazy, I guess, like in our lifetime? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think it is a big shift. And I think that's what I was trying to get at, why we see so much polarity right now, because I think there's a huge shift, and right before a huge shift, everything's got to be completely opposite. It's like it creates a balance. And then I'm pretty sure what we're going to see pretty soon is there is going to be one of those magnetic, pole shifts pretty soon, because everything's flipping. And so as everything's flipping, of course, the poles are going to shift again. It's all the same thing. It's like we were talking about earlier, and I'm like, you asked how I was feeling. I'm like, I'm a little tired today. And you're like, oh, well, there was a huge
Geomagnetic storm.
the Northern Lights. What'd you call it though? A geomagnetic storm?
Yeah, there was a huge geomagnetic storm. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, well, is it the geomagnetic storm that's making me tired, or is it my tiredness that's creating the geomagnetic storm? Right.
Right. Yeah.
And let's be real. The truth is the reality, the material world's an outpicturing of our consciousness and our inner world. So we are creating everything. And as we rise in awareness within ourselves and the truth, the whole outer world has to fall apart, and it's actually happening secondary, not primary, and Martin Luther King, all these guys have said this over the years, Einstein, you can't solve the problem on the same level of consciousness so it's created, or, you can't fight dark with dark, you fight it with light. You can't fight hate with hate, you fight it with love. And the point is once you see it outside of yourselves, it's too late. It's already been created. You have to create it internally to see it externally.
Interesting. So do you have to, okay, so say, for example, this geomagnetic storm happened, right? So would you have to have noticed something and then the storm would have happened? Or would you have had to like internalize something and then you would have noticed you were tired, and then you would have seen the storm? Or could you have subconsciously integrated something, and then you would have noticed you were tired, and then you
No,
would
I mean, I don't watch TV or pay attention to very many things. So like I just know, yeah, yesterday and today I was like just kind of feeling drained and all these things, and I wasn't sure why exactly. But then when we talked, you're like, oh, there's an electromagnetic storm, and it made it all the way to California. But that's big. I mean, they rarely make it to California. And we even had one last year that made it even to San Diego. We had northern lights even in San Diego last year, which
oh
is
wow.
never, I don't think it's ever happened. So I think, I believe it's like divination tools, right? Like tarot, like they're all little tricks we use in the material world to show us what's going on within us. Eventually you realize when you're really in tune with yourself, generally you don't need the confirmation anymore, but it still happens,
Yeah.
and it's cute. It's like, oh, of course that happened. I feeling like crap. Or, people, oh, Mercury's always in retrograde. Well, Mercury's always in retrograde, but it does give us little tools to play the fun little simulation, the participation of the universe, right? That allows us to play with it. And so to me, they're all just confirmations of really, when you're really in tune with yourself, you already know. But when we observe outside of ourselves, we get reflections back of things that describe what we're internally already going through.
So do you think you set those little Easter eggs?
Well, of course, it's all you. So the Easter and the awareness, the actually looking for them coming into your awareness is coming in because they're always showing you where you're, they're showing you everything all the time, especially when you pay attention and you look for them. The more you look for them, the more you see them. It's like that same thing. The more I look, the more it shows me. It's the same thing,
Okay, fair enough.
That makes
Every time you turn around, it messes me up because I know it's an AI picture, but I'm like, is he looking for ghosts?
I'm looking, you know why? Because all this stuff is I keep looking at it because it's so stressful. I'm like, that's why I'm like, maybe these books right here are the only things that are, worth keeping. But maybe
I'm waiting for a ghost to pop out from under the table. So,
the dog keeps going to the front door, and so I wasn't sure. I know the housekeepers are coming in a little bit, so I would keep looking to see if somebody's coming. So that's why I keep turning around. And they're not coming to clean up this mess because there is no mess, actually, just normal. So yeah, I don't know. We go down some wormholes, So is it all the disease of more? I think the disease of more is honestly coming to an end. I think people are starting to wake up that we need to not have more. We need to actually having less is more. The younger generation is showing that. I believe it's like that system, they don't care, and so that system's going to fall apart. I mean, all these, it's interesting is people want to change things, but yet if they wanted to change things, they want to participate in things that they want to change. You know what I'm saying? So it's like maybe if we really all collectively got together and said, we don't like this, so let's just all quit doing it.
mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's interesting to think, yeah, because like certainly a couple of years ago, I stopped with it because like I just don't buy shit anymore. I just don't need it. I have zero desire for it. Like sometimes I want like something. It's like, okay, I want to support a local business or something, but it's like I don't buy it because I want the thing. I just want to support the business, like.
Yeah, I hear you. It's for me, it's I just have my basics of what I really need, and it's really not a lot. And don't get me wrong, I don't know. It's interesting when you kind of get placed in this neutrality or equanimity. Like, I remember when a girl I was dating, she'd be like, hey, what do you, she's like, oh, I'm craving this, I'm craving that. And like, I just don't really crave anything anymore. She's like, oh, where do you want to go eat? I'm like, I really don't care. Why don't you care? What, you should care. Like, she would take it kind of personal. Like, why don't you ever want to go anywhere? I'm like, you choose whatever you're craving because I'm okay with anything. Like I don't have, like, it's rare every once in a while. Every once in a while I still do. I'm like, ooh, that sounds good today. But like in general, like I'm okay with really like everything that's kind of happening. So I don't feel like I need to go get things. But if the universe for some reason keeps giving me signs to read a book, I might go get a book. If I need some new trunks to go to the beach, I'll go get a new set of trunks. I don't need 30 pairs of them, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just those little knickknacks for me don't do much. They don't, like, what are they for? I don't know. It's just something that's left my awareness, right? I like to keep it very simple. But then again, I do like plants. Plants. I do admit plants are my friend, and it's one of those things that plants are, I enjoy them, and so I think everybody's got their thing, but I think plants, also create oxygen, and that's my way of justifying why it's okay for me to have plants. So
You're a plant mom. You hoard them.
no, yeah, I used to. I
Did you?
absolutely yeah, no, when I was in my disease of Moore, I collected these rare plants called African cycads. They're the oldest living plant on the planet. They're here before dinosaurs, and I would definitely overspend money on them, and I spent a lot of money on them to have this collection, and I had to have every one of them, and it created problems in my marriage because my wife would be like, "Why are you buying? We should be doing these other things." I'm like, "No, I need this plant." So it's absolutely been part of my addiction is buying too many plants. It was a huge part. And actually, I'm just this last year, finally, went through finally selling the collection as I finalized the divorce and selling them and relinquishing something that was part of my disease. And even though they were healthy and they're beautiful, I believe it was my attachment that part of me gain, you got to lose your old life to gain your new one. And I think, unfortunately, with as much as I wanted to keep them all, the universe is like, no, we're taking everything from that level of everything you created, everything that we created through you on that level of consciousness is going to be taken. So you could, rebuild from the right state of mind, not the disease of more state of mind, but more the state of mind of being grateful and abundant and doing it for the right reasons. And also I look back and my yard at the time was like a botanical garden, but it was my yard. Nobody really could come in. And now it's like, well, if I'm going to do that again and I'm going to buy all these plants, why don't I do it in public where people can appreciate them as opposed to keeping them for myself? You know what I mean? And it's a whole different mindset. It's a complete shift. So how can we use this, this plant collection to educate people and let everybody appreciate these beautiful gifts, as opposed to me being selfish and, having a yard full of stuff that's really cool, but nobody else gets to appreciate them. So.
No, that would be really cool to see, especially if you can keep it. Yeah, I looked at the plant you were talking about. This is really cool.
Yeah, if you look up certain the African ones are encephalitis, so they're the African cycads, and they're really neat plants, and I had stuff in my yard that was extinct in nature. There was none left in the wild, and we propagate them. And, somewhere in my soul, collecting ancient things was there. But I also could say I was doing it probably out of ego, not out of soul, And so I think, go full circle on this disease of more. It's like, my last reality, so to speak, prior to sobriety was disease of more out of ego. And now it's more, I don't know if I want to call it a disease of more out of soul, but let's just say a whole different mindset of building a new life, but for the right reasons,
Mm-hmm. I don't know. You should really think about the botanical garden idea, though. That's a really nice idea. I think you do well.
I've thought about it for years. I at a certain point would like the universe to unfold it, and it will when it's supposed to. But right now I'm working on some other things that will get me there. So. Or the universe is giving me other little missions to participate with right now to
that one. A side quest down the line.
Exactly. All little side quests and all that fun stuff. So yeah.
So what do we have for the viewers to wrap up our topic? Because this was an interesting one. I like this topic.
Yeah, no, I liked it too. I think I don't know. Will you tell me? What do you think? What's your take on today? I'd like to hear you share a little bit more on this.
The disease of more. You know what? I think when I think of the disease of more, I think when I was in it, I didn't realize, I think, how spiritually sick I was, because I didn't think I was sick when I was in it. I did not. Like, I thought that I was chasing something that would heal me until I could actually sit still and just be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And like being able to get to a place where I could just be. And then I realized I didn't need any of the stuff that I had. I could much better deal with any kind of, what used to be crises. It just became little speed bumps in the road.
Yeah. I like what you just said about when you're in it, you didn't know you're in it. And then that's the thing. I think, gosh, it seems like so many people are, and I'm not judging. I've been there, but because I remember when I was there, I just did what everybody else did, and I never thought about anything. I really didn't have my own, and so it's like when you're in a system and you're in that system, you keep it alive, and you don't know system you're in when you're in it. You don't. It's like you're just an emanation of that vibration, and you're playing out that role, and it's not freedom, right? It's very you're just living what everybody else is doing, and we have that step says return us to sanity, right? And it's like, what do you mean return me to sanity? I'm not insane, and then as you do this work and you go into the shadows and you start to become self-reflective and self-admitting of things, right? You start to realize, damn, I was crazy, and it's happened to me multiple times in sobriety where I'm like, I'm not drinking and I'm using, but damn, I'm got crazy making behavior still, and I think the first step is just looking at your life and your world and going, where am I being excessive? Is it drinking and alcoholism? Is it shopping and buying clothes? Is it gambling? Is it hoarding? And then maybe ask yourself, why is it I'm doing this? Because it's really just something that seems to play out through people, depending on where you're at on your journey, right? And when you're doing it, you think it's totally normal, and in your mind, it is normal. And then because the world's reflecting back everything you do, that's what you see, and you're like, well, this is what I do. This is what everybody's doing. This is what everybody does. And it's like, no, when I got out of alcoholism, I'm like, I didn't know I was an alcoholic at first because I owned a liquor store. Everybody bought out booze all day. It's like, no, this is what everybody does. And come to find out, no, it's not. But my reality created a normalcy, making me think I was normal, And my mom, who kind of builds up a lot of stuff, she's like, well, no, this is what our generation does. And it's like, no, that's what you've told yourself, and it is true to a point. A lot of them do, but I could tell you on other aspects of people I know they don't, that are her age. So I think each generation has a kind of a virus, that it's a virus for that generation. And not everybody does it, but there's definitely, viruses being removed from those, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Generations. And then we each kind of become an unfoldment of that from our parents, right? And then, you get into the shadow work and you're like, we get to do these generational traumas, and they really all come from the same exact thing. It's just, how does it unfold on this plane of consciousness on this planet? So
Absolutely. I don't know. Well, that was another good one. Another good one.
We always seem to end up going down some interesting tangents that I don't know if people haven't figured out. This is obviously, we kind of say this is about sobriety, and it is about sobriety, but somewhere on my journey, I remember reading what sobriety meant. And the first one was abstinence from drugs and alcohol. But then right after it said sobriety is the state you were born spiritually. So it's like when you came in here, that's sobriety, And so, we go down some tangents and wormholes, but I think they're all imperative in the process at a certain point. And, still want people's feedback. Anyone commenting, let us know. I want to grow and evolve. Maybe I'm nuts, but the only way we grow is by, having people share and comment and, point out things that maybe I'm not seeing because I don't see everything.
Yes, it sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, another beautiful, fun week. Thanks for your time today, Victoria, and to everybody watching. I'm glad you guys keep, coming with us on the journey. So hopefully they keep coming.
Absolutely. Okay, see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
I love